Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Holly Pritchard, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flying Officer Jing Jing Bull. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths and floral tributes will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him in Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Henry Richmond Rose. Henry Rose was born in 1894 in Collie in central New South Wales. Known as Harry, he was the eldest of 13 born to George Henry Rose, a motor mechanic, and his wife, Lydia. Harry grew up in the rural town of Cranbourne, where he attended the local school. As a young adult, he trained as a blacksmith before relocating to Sydney with his family. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Harry was living in the Sydney suburb of Camperdown and working as an engine driver. Harry Rose enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 6th of March 1916. He was assigned to the 8th Reinforcements of the 30th Battalion with the rank of private. After some training, he embarked for active service on the 5th of August 1916, sailing from Sydney to the troopship Ballarat. In Plymouth, England, Private Rose continued training alongside other new recruits. In early November, he moved to the Western Front, where he was transferred to the 1st Battalion and joined his comrades in the front line as a bitterly cold winter began to set in. Rose spent the first weeks of active service rotating in and out of the trenches and training in the rear areas. In early December, while serving in the lines around town of Vinacourt, Rose was wounded in action for the first time. Suffering from a gunshot wound to his right thigh, he was evacuated to England for treatment. He remained in hospital for several months and was discharged in early 1917. After a short period of leave, Rose reported for duty in April. He was then transferred to the newly formed 62nd Battalion, which was raised from the combination of fresh recruits and veterans. Shortly after, Rose contracted mumps and again found himself in hospital. By the time he had recovered, the 62nd Battalion had been disbanded because of a lack of manpower. Private Rose was transferred back to the 1st Battalion and was at the front of his unit on the 16th of October 1917. His time in hospital in England had spared him involvement in some of the horrendous battles, including Bullecourt, Menin Road, and Passchendaele. Arriving at the conclusion of these major attacks, Rose and his comrades were engaged in routine duty in the trenches as they defended gains made during the earlier offensives. During this activity, Rose was wounded for a second time when the enemy shelled their lines on the 7th of November. He was struck in the hip by shrapnel, was again evacuated for medical treatment, but he was away for less than 1 week and returned to the lines in time to spend Christmas in the trenches. In early 1918, German forces launched a major offensive with a series of heavy attacks along the Allied front. For several months, the enemies tried to push Allied forces further back. The German offences ended in failure in July 1918, by which time Rose had been promoted to Lance Corporal. Allied forces launched an offensive of their own on the 8th of August, pushing the Germans further and further back towards the final lines of defence. By September, the Allies were breaching sections of the Hindenburg Line. Rose and his comrades were tasked with attacking the outpost line of the German trenches. They attacked at dawn, advancing under rain and heavy fog. As they quickly cut off the German defenders and seized their objectives, but the Allied forces suffered almost 7,000 casualties in the process. Among the dead was Lance Corporal Harry Rose, who was killed while trying to rescue a wounded soldier. One of his comrades told the Red Cross, "Harry was a friend of Lieutenant Judd, and on the 18th of September, in the attack of St. Quentin Fort, Judd was lying wounded in a trench and Rose went for a stretcher for him." Harry was killed outright as soon as he rose over the parados. He was a very popular man and very game. Henry Rose's final resting place was never uncovered. Today, he is commemorated on the Australian War Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux. Lance Corporal Harry Rose was 24 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving the First World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Villers-Bretonneux Memorial is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. But this is one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Henry Richmond Rose, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.